All right. Hello, everyone. We are now live for the Pentateuch Part 1. I'm going to build an audience on Facebook, and then we will get started. It's good to see everyone. Please comment in the comment section box there if you're with us, so I'll know that you're here. Or at least I know which students are here. Okay. Is that Brother Wayne? Void, is that correct? Give me just a moment as we build this audience. We still have about 2 minutes before we actually need to get started. Good afternoon. Good to see you, brother. Glad you're with us. All right. Hope everyone is doing okay. We have one live viewer at this time. I will try and see patience today. I'm not sure quite what that meant, brother. Maybe you want to... I will try and see patience today. I think I know what you mean. Okay. It is time to go ahead and get started. We have about another minute, but I guess I'll go ahead and begin. Friends, I've been looking at all of your emails. I appreciate you sending me all of your emails. I see that many of you have been doing your memory work. I appreciate that. Again, that's concerning the honor system. If you're memorizing those verses or if you're looking at the pages, which I trust that you are attempting to try to memorize those verses. Also, everyone has been doing a very good job on your paragraphs. I appreciate it very much. And I hope those paragraphs have been beneficial to you. Remember, you can use those throughout times to come. If you're ever teaching a Bible class, maybe you're studying with someone one-on-one, you can turn to those paragraphs and you can have a highlight of each chapter of the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Law of Moses. So that will help in your future studies. What I want to do today, friends, is I want to get through the entire book of Genesis. Now, that's going to be hard. I think we understand that. But we're in chapter 28. Friends, we're looking at 22 chapters, 23 chapters we need to cover today. So we're going to go rapidly. We're not going to spend much time on each chapter. We're not even going to be really touching the hem of the garment. So I hope that you all have been reading your chapters. You've been meditating upon these chapters, because we're getting really into the final stages of the development of Israel's history. Once we open the book of Exodus, we're going to find them in Egypt. They're going to be in slavery to Pharaoh. So we really need to make sure that we're reading these chapters ahead, or you will not even understand the main points of the chapter in which we will be discussing today. All right, we finished Abraham's life last week and touched a little bit, I believe, on Isaac's life. We're going to concern ourselves for the first part of this class today with Jacob's life. Okay, Jacob's life. Jacob was a very important individual, great patriarch, especially concerning the development of God's people, Israel. Jacob's name would be changed to Israel. Israel, I want you to focus on that name for just a moment. The last letters of that name, El, simply means God. Elohim, the plural name of God. Israel means involvement with God. All right? So if you were a part of the nation of Israel, part of the covenant, you were involved with God. God was your sovereign leader. Okay? So you got to keep that in mind. In chapter 28, we have... In verse 1, it says, And Isaac called Jacob and blessed him, and charged him and said unto him, Thou shalt not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. What do we see here that we seen last week? Do you remember Abraham did not want Isaac to take a wife from an idolatrous nation, an idolatrous country like Canaan? Do you remember that? Why was that? Because God did not want His people to intermingle with people who worship idols. Okay? God's people, starting with the patriarchs, their purpose was to show forth the praises of God by the way that they lived their lives, their influence. All right? They were to be an influence on these surrounding nations, not for the bad, but for the good. And some of them failed from time to time, but they got back up. And that's why Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Joseph, starting with Noah really, are great examples of what a righteous individual can do amongst an unrighteous nation. All right? It can happen, and we see that. But you know what it takes? It takes an individual separating themselves from those who walk in darkness, those who walk in error, and those who are involved in sin. All right? It takes that. One has to make that commitment and stick with that commitment by action. So we have Isaac calling Jacob, do not take a daughter, that is a wife, from the nation of Canaan. But he says, arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, thy mother's father, and take thee a wife from thence of the daughters of Laban, thy mother's brother. Okay, so we find that he went back to his area where he grew up to find a wife. Now, if you notice, let's go down to verse 14. Well, matter of fact, let's start in verse 10, concerning ourselves with the vision that Jacob received. The Bible says, and Jacob went out from Beersheba, and went toward Haran, and he lighted upon a certain place, and tarried there all night, because the sun was set. And he took of the stones of that place, and put them for his pillows, and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached heaven, and behold, the angels of God ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it, and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham thy father, the God of Isaac. The land whereon thou liest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed. Now, question. Did God give the land to Jacob directly? Think about that now. Did God give the land to Jacob directly? Well, absolutely not. So, to whom does this refer? Well, friends, this points to Jacob's descendants, which would eventually be the nation of Israel. Did God give the nation of Israel the land? Yes. Do you remember back, the foundation of God's promise was in Genesis chapter 12, 1 and 3. He told Abraham to leave thy country and thy kindred and go to a land that I will show thee, and I will make of thee a great nation. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Well, we found three promises there. Seed promise, nation promise, land promise. Well, we know that all three of those promises have been fulfilled, but the seed promise was last. That is, Christ would come into the world to redeem man back to God. Now, you got to understand, the land promise was fulfilled once Joshua led that generation of God's people over the land of Jordan, or over Jordan, the Jordan River. Okay? So keep that in mind. No, this was not directly to Jacob, but it's referring to his descendants. Notice future tense. He says, I will give it. He hasn't given it yet. He says, I will give it, denoting the future. All right? So that's something to keep in mind. We have a false group who advocates that Jesus Christ is coming to this earth someday, and he's going to build a physical kingdom, and he's going to reign over that kingdom for 1,000 years. We would call this group premillennialist. Well, this is false doctrine, obviously. Friends, we're having just some difficulties here. Hang on just a second. We're having technical difficulties. What else is new, right? Okay. But anyway, what were we talking about? Okay, so... Oh, I need to turn that down. I am just now seeing some of the messages that you guys have been sending. I don't know why that happens, but it does. Anyway, freezing up a lot. I'm sorry about that, brother. I don't know what to tell you. I hate that that happens. It seems like we deal with this at least one time a week. And I know it can be frustrating to you. If I were you, brother, if it keeps freezing up, just log off. Maybe reboot your phone. If that doesn't work, then this lesson will be archived so you can watch it at a later time. That's up to you. You can try to be patient with the system or whatnot. But we got to keep going here. So we find that Jacob, the promise was given to him as it was given to his father Isaac, and as it was given to Isaac, and then also Abraham. Okay? So this promise just continues. Why? God is tracing his seed line. Christ has to come into the world. Okay? Christ is that seed in whom all nations will be blessed. Alright? So, let's look at chapter 29. Chapter 29 is a good chapter of God's gracious providence. That is his foresight. We see a lot of providence at work in the lives of his children in chapter 29. We find that Jacob loved Rachel more than he did Leah. And we find how Rachel and Leah became very distraught at each other. I hope you read ahead concerning this chapter. Leah, friends, was the principal wife in Jacob's life. Leah bore 6 sons to Jacob. David, King David, descended from Leah. And Leah even ended up burying Jacob. But that's still beyond the point. All right? Jacob loved Rachel, which caused the dispute and the controversy that we had with Leah and Rachel. Okay? Because of this love that Jacob had for Rachel more than he had for Leah. Are there any questions concerning chapter 29? We're having to go so fast that we're just kind of touching some highlights. Any questions? All right. Good to see you, Sister Maya. Chapter 30. All right, chapter 30. We now come to Jacob's sons. All right, are about to be introduced to the scene, which we will know through Israel's history that Jacob's sons would be very important, because from them would be the 12 tribes of what we know as Israel, the 12 tribes of Jacob. We could say it either way. And so from these sons, the descendants of these sons, came forth those tribes. And we will probably have those tribes on the test. I will want you to give me those 12 tribes, at least by name, on the test. By the way, concerning the test, I've had a few of you email me concerning the test. The midterm exam is going to come out next week. I'm going to send it out to you, Lord willing, on Tuesday. On Tuesday. It will be due the following Thursday. All right? I'll send it out Tuesday. It will be due the following Thursday. The whole entire test will be on the book of Genesis. All right? The whole entire test will be on the book of Genesis. It will not be something that is exceptionally hard that one cannot pass. It will be discussion questions. You can use the Bible even. I prefer that you don't. I prefer that you try to remember without using the Bible those questions. But it's up to you. Whatever helps you. I don't want you to become frustrated or discouraged and not study the Bible anymore because of that. So that's totally up to you. I don't want to put too much pressure on you in regard to that. So we have the 12 tribes of Jacob mentioned in chapter 30. And so I hope you'll memorize those for the test. Chapter 31, we find that Jacob fled from the presence of Laban. We understand there was a major dispute between these two. Laban treated Jacob very unfairly, no doubt. Chapter 32, Jacob is now going to prepare to meet his brother. And so we're about to see that happen. You also see where Jacob is about to wrestle with the angel. And this is where his name changes to Israel. All right? Dealing with God. Involvement with God. All right? Chapter 33. Chapter 33. We find that during this reunion of Jacob and Esau, that Esau's thinking war. Esau thinking, hey, we're about to meet up and we're about to fight, and this is about to be an all-out brawl. Well, friends, that's not the case. Jacob didn't have that in mind. Jacob's hoping for a peaceful meeting, and incidentally, it turned out the way Jacob would have it. Chapter 34 is a very dark time in the history of Israel. We have Dinah, which was the daughter of Leah. She went out to see the daughters of the land. Now, why would she want to go out to a whole bunch of people who worship idols and see what they're doing? She knew what they were doing. The head of the family should have been on his game here, and he should have stepped up and not allowed Dinah to go, but she did. She was a free moral agent. Whether the father of the house said don't go or not, she went, and it was to her own demise. And we found out towards the end of this chapter. What happened. You go to a place where they are worshiping idols. You go to a place where God is not on the minds of the people. Friends, they can very much be an influence on you and cause you to start thinking the same way they're thinking. Okay? The people thought like this in these pagan nations because they did not know the true God of Israel, and it all falls on the people of God. They should have been the ones that brought forth, or showed forth, if you will, the praises of their God. If they didn't, how were they going to know? Well, that's why God chose certain people of faith, to be able to get God's message to the people. He's always used people. He's always used mankind to do that. The crown of His creation. Chapter 35. All right, chapter 35. Very, very short chapter, but at the same time, very important, for we have the death of Isaac rapidly approaching. Chapter 36 gives us the generations of Esau. All right, the generations of Esau. Are we still freezing up, or can you all hear me? Are we still freezing up, or can you all hear me? Maybe you can. Sorry, we're kind of getting off here, but I need to check the phone. If we're freezing up, please let me know. If you're with me, let me know as well. It might help me a little bit in all of this. All right. I don't know what's going on with my computer, friends. Chapter 37 through 50, we have the life of Joseph. The life of Joseph. Now, Joseph he played a vital part in Israel's history. Matter of fact, he's the one who had a major influence for good on the Egyptians, which the people respected, especially the leader at this time. And we find that also Joseph did not receive the promise, but it was handed down to Jacob. Now you're going to find in your mind, you're probably thinking, if you've read ahead, why would Joseph not receive the promise? Because he's the key character in these chapters. Well, yes, we have in these chapters Joseph's life mentioned more than Jacob, but that's not the point. All right, he promised it to Jacob because he wrestled with Jacob. God did, the angel of God, and he wanted to pass this down to Jacob. Okay, that was his purpose. His name became Israel, and from his sons, from the descendants of his sons, a great nation developed. But Joseph played a vital part in getting them to Egypt in such a good and honest and loyal fashion. All right, so you can think of it like that. We have in chapter 37 where Joseph is given the coat of many colors. And because of that, the brothers got upset. Now, why would the brothers get upset at Joseph getting the coat of many colors? Well, friends, the coat of many colors was to go to the oldest or the eldest child. And it didn't. It went to Joseph, all because Jacob loved Joseph more than he loved the other sons. And that was to his own demise. Friends, it's not good as parents to pick and choose your children or to exalt one child above another. It's only going to end into destruction. And we find that in the life of Joseph and his brothers when Jacob decided to love Joseph more than the others, was partial in his love to Joseph. All right? And because of that, the brothers wanted revenge. What did they do in chapter 37? Well, the brothers of Joseph, they cast him into a pit because they were mad. They left him for dead. And they stole that coat of many colors. Well, we find that they even sold him to Egyptian slavery, which incidentally tells us how he came into Egypt, because his brothers sold him there. Maybe you weren't sure on that matter, so that can clarify that. I know there has been some different ideas about how Joseph got down to Egypt. Well, we see very clearly that his brothers put him there. All right? Because of sin. Because of the father showing partiality in the children. Which one wrong does not make a right, but yet it still happened. All right? Or two wrongs and so forth. Any questions? Any comments? All right? I really hope that we're still streaming. We're not having as many tune in as we usually do. So it could be that we're having technical difficulties. So I would encourage you to go to the archived video and listen to it on a later time. All right, chapter 38. Chapter 38, we have what we would call the error of Judah. Okay, the error of Judah. Incidentally, from which tribe did Jesus come? Well, he came from the tribe of Judah, did he not? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, we'll find in Genesis chapter 49 and verse 10. But yet, the father of the descendants of Judah messed up tremendously. He sinned against God, and yet, look, the promise seed came through his tribe. It's amazing how that works. God doesn't do anything arbitrarily. We see that God has a purpose in doing things. He had a reason for him sending Christ through the tribe of Judah. All right? Judah, we find in chapter 38, friends, he acted in destruction simply because of lust. I mean, because of his own lust, he acted out upon it. He tried to fulfill that desire that he had, that gratification. And we see what happened to him. All right? Chapter 39. Chapter 39 is a great chapter on providence. We find that Potiphar was very impressed with Joseph's fidelity and also his ability. All right? And this is something we need to take note on. Potiphar is taking note that everything that Joseph is doing is prospering. And since everything that Joseph is doing is prospering, the God in which he worships must be one that I need to heed to. Well, that's what happened. All right? Not fully, not wholly, but they realize Joseph's being an example to everyone. And they're thinking in their mind, the God that he serves must be doing something right. You see, Joseph put that in their brain. God was introduced to the Egyptians because of Joseph's influence. God was introduced to that great nation of Egypt, physically great nation of Egypt, because of Joseph's example. You see what tremendous impact someone's character and the way they exhibit and demonstrate Christ in their life. You see what can happen? It can lead to souls being saved and to people being inspired to want to serve the one true and living God. All right? So, it gets, if you look at, I would say verse 7, it came to pass after these things that his master's wife, Potiphar's wife, wanted to sleep with Joseph. She set her eyes on him and wanted to sleep with him, wanted to have sex with him. And she was married, so this would have been adultery, but Joseph didn't have anything to do with it, so he fled the sin. He left. He ran from sin because he knew that if he would have committed adultery with Potiphar's wife, he knew that that would be a sin against God, not just Potiphar, but God first. For Joseph was a God-fearer. All right? He was one who stood in awe of God, and he wanted to serve and worship God and wholly do it. Wholeheartedly do it. And that's what we find. All right? However, Potiphar's wife was very wicked, wasn't she? She tried to catch Joseph in a trap. But we see the example of Joseph in this account. Friends, let me just say this. There is a host of reasons why we do not give in to temptation. All right? But the primary reason is because we belong to God. Those in Christ belong to God. They recognize that. They recognize that they are a peculiar people, a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, and that they should show forth the praises of Him that has been called out of darkness into God's marvelous light, 1 Peter 2:9. That they are living stones to offer up spiritual sacrifices unto God, 1 Peter 2 and verse 5. So some things we need to consider here. All right, there's a host of reasons we don't give in to temptation, but the main reason is because we belong to God. I'll tell you something else we learned about the situation of Potiphar and Joseph, is at the hands of evil people, good circumstances can become very bad. Okay? Good circumstances can become very bad. Joseph had it good for a while, didn't he? But it turned bad for him. He was tested. His faith was tested, and he excelled tremendously in his faith. Chapter 40, we have the account of the butler and the captain of the guard. And it's a very interesting account here, this dream that they're having. Very short chapter. So I want you to read that on your own. We get into chapter 41. And in chapter 41, we have Joseph's interpretation. And then he becomes ruler over Egypt. All right? Now, do you see God's providence in all of this? Providence means foresight. I mean, look at Joseph. Went from the condition of being good to bad, now to good again. It takes time, right? We're not on our time. We're on God's time. God is not on our time especially. It takes time, and sometimes good can come from bad. All right? But we're always, God sets, let's say it like this. God's people, all right, when they are true to Him, will prove it by their actions. And we're seeing that in the life of Joseph and these great patriarchs. And we even see that when these great patriarchs failed God from time to time, they got back up. Abraham went down to Egypt. He wasn't told to go down to Egypt. And because of that, a great famine, plagues, became upon Pharaoh. Genesis chapter 13 or so. So we see what happened there. Abraham was not told to go to Egypt, but he did on his own free will, on his own, without having any authority to go. So we see these great patriarchs, as great as they were, they messed up from time to time, but they figured it out. All right? And so that's something to think about. Now, chapter 42. Let's see. Chapter 42. Sister Maye, if you can hear me, if the video's working, can you just say yes or yay or nay, please? I'm sorry, I just don't even know if we're functioning correctly right now. I don't even know if the video's working. I see that you've joined us. I just hope that we're being recorded live. Let me just check something real quick before we move on. James Conley, good to have you. James Conley, if you can hear me, can you just say something real quick, please? Or if the video is working well, just say yay or nay. We've been having some technical difficulties, and I just want to make sure we're working. Okay, hear you loud and clear, buddy. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. All right, chapter 42. Chapter 42, we find Joseph's brethren. They come to buy corn in Egypt. They're distressed. They're very distressed, and they return to their father in Canaan. Chapter 43, we find that the famine was very sore in the land. All right, this famine that was going on in the land became very sore. And so people came to Egypt. They came to Joseph. And this is how Joseph became very influential on these other nations. He showed forth the praises of God in his example. All right, chapter 44 continues this account. Go over to chapter 45. All right, and you remember that Joseph's brothers sold him into Egyptian slavery. They threw him into a pit, took a coat of many colors, took it back to his father and said, hey, look, a dog has killed him. Or a wild beast killed him, And now Joseph is wanting to reunite with his family. He's missing his family. Just imagine being in a foreign country with idolatry being rampant in the place where you're at, missing your family. Well, chapter 45, verse 1, then Joseph could not refrain himself before all them that stood by him, and he cried, because every man to go out from me, and there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren. So he's about to make himself known to his brethren. So Joseph is made known to his brethren. Friends, this was a wonderful reunion. All right, you can just imagine how scared and frightened his brothers must have been. But that's not the point. The point is Joseph has a forgiving spirit. He mentioned on one occasion, it was God that led me here. The providence of God is why I'm here. You guys, my brothers, you didn't put me here. Joseph had a wonderful attitude in the midst of trials. Then chapter 46, my friends, is a very, very important chapter. All right? They're all important, obviously. I want to read the first 3 or 4 verses of chapter 46. Read with me, please. And Israel took his journey with all that he had, and came to Beersheba, and offered sacrifices unto the God of his father Isaac. And God spake unto Israel in the visions of the night, and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here am I. And he said, I am God, the God of thy father. Fear not to go down into Egypt, for I will there make of thee a great nation. This was the last time that God spoke to Joseph. And notice what he's saying here. This really, it kind of sounds a whole lot like what he said to Isaac and Abraham. He says, I will there make of thee a great nation. I will go down with thee in Egypt, and I will also surely bring thee up again. And Joseph shall put his hands upon thine eyes. Oh, how wonderful this is, this move to Egypt. He tells him to go, but I'm going to bring you back. You see, his descendants is going to be blessed just like he told Abraham. And so we see that coming to fruition, and we talked about that in the promise to Abraham. Chapter 47. This famine became very sore. The Egyptians sell their land, and we find this progressing. Let's go over to chapter 49. Friends, I said I want to get through the rest of Genesis today, so we're moving fast, I understand. Chapter 49, what we have is a prophecy concerning each tribe. All right? Tribe. That is, a prophecy was pronounced. All right, Jacob mentioned a prophecy to each one of his sons that his descendants would end up some way or another. Here we find this list in chapter 49. All right? Really, it goes back to Genesis 12, 1 through 3, that the blessing would come through Judah. Christ would come through the tribe of Judah, no doubt. All right? And I think we understand that. Let me mention for just a moment about each tribe. Reuben was going to be equal to dignity and authority. All right? Dignity and authority usually belong to the firstborn. But we will find that Reuben was very spiritually unsteady. All right? Very unsteady. Simeon, Levi, we find that what was received by them was not very good. Issachar was a strong man. He enjoyed rest, took pleasure in his land, accepted oppression and servanthood. But Judah, notice the prophecy concerning Judah. Judah would be honored and respected, and the person of its illustrious member it would praise, which would be the Christ. All right? The Christ. So very, very important to understand that. Friends, this is absolutely amazing to see the providence of God preserving His seed, Christ, from the very pronouncement that in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. From Genesis chapter 12, 1 through 3, we're seeing that happen. And that is unbelievable. All right? And really, all of this was encouraged by the life of Joseph. All of this was encouraged simply by the life of Joseph. Is that not amazing? What one person's example can do? Well, we see that. We see it loud and clear. All right? Notice verse 10 of chapter 49. It says, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him, all right? This is a him, shall the gathering of the people be. Shiloh simply means peace. Friends, this is a reference to the Messiah. All right? Mark that in your Bibles. Judah became dominant. All right? You had David. After David, you had Solomon. After Solomon, you eventually had the Christ. All right? So, incidentally, who was the lion of the tribe of Judah? Revelation 5:5. Well, the lion of the tribe of Judah was Jesus the Christ. All right? It was the Redeemer of mankind. And so our Redeemer, our Savior, our Justifier, our Reconciler came through the tribe of Judah. And friends, it was all because God promised to Abraham. Really, it goes back to Genesis 3:15. But all falls and hinges on Genesis 12:1 and 3, that in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Well, Judah came from the loins of Abraham because Jacob was Abraham's grandson. Right? You had Isaac being Abraham's son, Jacob being Isaac's son, which would make Jacob Abraham's grandson. And so it really started with the family of Abraham. Are there any questions concerning that? All right. Chapter 50, we just find that they ended up in Egypt. They ended up in Egypt just as God said would happen. They did. And we open up the book of Exodus, and there they are in Egypt. And then we find that they are eventually going to be serving under a mean Pharaoh, and they're going to serve with rigor, and they're going to be in bondage, and God is going to lead them out. So what are we going to do next time? We're going to open up the book of Exodus, and we're going to start studying it. What I will do is Tuesday, Lord willing, I'll send that test to everyone, all right, and it will be due the following Thursday. So you'll have plenty of time to do the test. You will see that it's not that hard. If you have any questions or comments concerning the test when you get it, please email me through our message system. All right, the email is on the syllabus. If you have any personal questions about this class and you didn't want to mention it live, please email me and let's talk about it. All right, we appreciate everyone joining today, and we hope everyone has a good day. But friends, for today, that's all. Thank you.